remember those lesbians who are on the front lines in so many cities today, trying to resist.
When we think about LGBT rights, we don't often think about women's right to land and inheritance, girls' access to education, or freedom of movement. These women's rights issues are critical for lesbian, bisexual, and queer women, but don't usually rank high among LGBT rights movements' priorities. At the same time, LBQ plus women are also underrepresented in women's rights research and advocacy. The global scale of discrimination and violence against them has fallen through the cracks. A Human Rights Watch global investigation uncovered the most critical forms of violence against LBQ plus women. The pressure to marry men and forced marriage were the most frequently reported abuses experienced by LBQ plus people around the world.
Bride napping and forced marriages are common practices in Kyrgyzstan, and my story is not unique. And when I was 18, I wanted to move out from the house. But my mom always said, you will leave this house with a husband or after my death. So I have to get married. I kept thinking if I tried hard enough, I would probably like staying with a man. But it was terrible. It was torture to share a bed with a person you don't really like.
Women face barriers or challenges in accessing and controlling land and property in about 40% of the world. This makes it much harder for two women to start a life together if neither can inherit, own, or access land on equal terms with men. For example, in Mexico, women often do not have a say over how traditional lands are managed, particularly in rural and indigenous communities.
Se defiende el territorio, pero no todas podemos acceder al territorio. Quienes acceden principalmente siguen siendo los varones, y la otra también es que en las comunidades hay como una forma de legitimizarnos a partir de ser esposas. Y entonces, cuando no somos esposas, cuando no somos madres, como que la legitimidad no es la misma.
Masculine-presenting women are often targeted with threats, physical attacks, sexual violence, and harassment for not looking feminine enough and for daring to occupy masculine space in the world.
The violence you experience is very convoluted in understanding what it means to separate your blackness from your sexual orientation and your gender identity in itself. As a black woman who's masculine presented, not only do people see you as this masculine presenting person, they also give people permission to then be more aggressive with you. I lived in St. Louis where I was physically attacked by the police. Still to this day, I don't know if it was because I do present as a male or if it was just because of my blackness.
LBQ plus women face sexual harassment, violence, and threats by male colleagues at work, as well as discrimination in hiring practices and widespread economic inequality.
Nosotros hemos recibido denuncias de lesbianas que están trabajando en fundos y el problema que tienen es el poder hacer la denuncia. ¿A quién acudir? ¿Quién les va a creer en estas idiosincrasias? También cómo van a ausentarse del trabajo sin volver a sufrir una violencia o un abuso sexual. Y después tenemos estas situaciones. ¿Para qué voy a ir a denunciar si me viola? ¿Para qué voy a ir a denunciar? Porque en definitiva el mensaje social, el mensaje de la violencia institucional es que te lo mereces.
30% of the 187 economies examined by the World Bank have laws that limit women's freedom of movement. Laws criminalizing same-sex relations also restrict LBQ plus women's movements and empower police to harass LBQ plus women and activists in public.
It took me a lot of time to accept myself because here in Tunisia it's a huge taboo. It's something that it's like people would prefer to die to not let that secret get out. And I started to avoid the checkpoints of the police, even though I did nothing. They checked, why is your hair short? Did you run from your parents? Are you a lesbian? I don't feel safe in my own country. At moments of my life, I didn't feel safe in my own bed.
LBQ plus activists are leading political, land, environmental, economic, gender, and racial justice movements beyond what is typically considered LGBT rights work. But many lack international visibility and funding, and their human rights work makes them targets for violent attacks.
Last October we had a really small event for the trans community. Like half an hour in, someone knocked on the door and like a group of 11 people were entering. And I walked towards them like with my arms open. I was like, no, you can't enter. And at that point he just punched me, and then at that moment I realized that they're here to fight. I believe that the attack in the Rainbow Hub was also part of an elections campaign, because the person who was leading the group was running for president. We're not making it up. Like, all the talk about discrimination and hate crimes is not just theory, it's also happening.
Governments around the world should abolish sexist laws and create protocols that explicitly protect the rights of LBQ plus people. Donors should fund LBQ plus rights organizations and LBQ plus led movements for environmental, racial, economic, and migrant rights.